Look, I am not a legal professional, but I have watched enough Law and Order, Reasonable Doubt, and She-Hulk Attorney at Law to know that it's not a good thing when a lawyer representing a client has to get their own lawyer. It may be worse than that when that lawyer speaks with federal investigators about the case as a potential witness. NBC News has learned that Christina Bobb, one of the lawyers representing Donald Trump in the FBI investigation of his mishandling of classified documents, spoke to federal investigators on Friday. The former anchor with the far-right OAN network was the Trump attorney who signed a letter to the DOJ in June certifying that Trump had turned over all classified material in his possession, a claim which has been proven to be false following the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago in August. That search was exactly 9 weeks ago, and to this day, the twice-impeached former president has not said why he took thousands of government documents, including some with markings indicating they held the country's most guarded secrets, or what he was planning to do with them. New reporting from the New York Times indicates one potential motive to give him leverage to pressure the government into this sort of weird quid pro quo. The Times writes that late last year, Trump was still determined to show he had been wronged by the FBI investigation into his 2016 campaign's ties to Russia, and wanted documents that the National Archive wasn't willing to give him that he thought would prove his claims. Trump's idea, he wanted to cut a deal. In exchange for those documents, Mr. Trump told advisors he would return to the National Archives the boxes of material he had taken to Mar-a-Lago. Mr. Trump's aides never pursued the idea. Joining me now is Jill Wine-Banks, former assistant Watergate special prosecutor and co-host of the Sisters-in-Law podcast. Jill, thank you so much. I can't think of a better person to talk to about this. So I first want to get to this idea of a quid pro quo. What we're hearing here is that Trump, still believing that the FBI was unfairly investigating, was like, okay, here's my plan. Here's my plan, Jared. Here's my plan, everybody. I'm going to steal stuff that I know isn't mine in the hopes that the government will then give me documents to prove a theory that I had 4 years as president to find out when I did have access to classified documents. Am I crazy for thinking that that doesn't even make sense even by Trumpian standards? Or was there some logic here where maybe the DOJ would have been willing to cut that deal in exchange for getting some of these documents back?
You are not crazy. I'm afraid that it's Donald Trump who is. He is definitely delusional in thinking this. First of all, as you noted, if he had such documents, if there were such documents, if they possibly existed, he had 4 years when he had every right to ask for them and to get them. So my suspicion is they do not exist. So let's take that first. Secondly, you cannot steal something to barter. And it does go back to what happened in Ukraine, where he was trying to say, okay, I'll give you what you're legally entitled to, the funding, if you do this terrible thing for me and make up something about Joe Biden. That is not how America is supposed to be doing business. That is illegal on every aspect. So no, there's nothing there. You have it completely correct. There's nothing wrong with your thinking. And it should be that everybody in America realizes that there are no such documents, and that even if there were, he can't trade stolen documents that he has no right to possess. And this goes back a long way. The Presidential Records Act was a result of Richard Nixon trying to, one, take tax deductions for having documents, and two, trying to leave the White House when he resigned with the tapes. So that's why we have this law, to give it to journalists and to historians, to the American people, not to the person who created them as president.
So, Jill, here's the other part of this that I think sort of baffles me and a lot of people want to understand. At this point, you have the president who lied, and it's very likely that sort of his lawyer, Christina Bobb, is like, look, I can only operate based on what my client tells me. But it looks like more and more people are getting nervous about the idea of even working for this guy. Not that I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for a MAGA lawyer who works with Trump, but as a lawyer, are people working for him putting themselves in jeopardy by representing a client who seems to consistently be, implicating himself and incriminating himself in his own public statements? Because don't you run the risk of being disbarred? Don't you run the risk of some other sanctions from the legal field if you are knowingly representing somebody who even you know is committing crime?
Yes, the answer is clear. I mean, look at Rudy Giuliani. It's already happened to him. It's happening to Sidney Powell. It can happen to many others. In addition, your reputation is shot. So who's going to hire you in the future? I'm stunned, for example, that Jim Trusty signed the CNN complaint. That is a frivolous lawsuit. It will be dismissed, I would predict, under 12b-6, which says failure to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. His reputation will be shot. Who's going to want to hire him? So, yeah, it really makes no sense. I have to say that Christina Bobb was careful. She did not say there is absolutely nothing left. Everything's been turned over. She said, based on the information provided to me, that is deliberately misleading. But under a Supreme Court case, deliberately misleading, but literally true, is not perjury. So it's not perjury. On the other hand, by saying what she said, she opens herself up to be questioned. And I assume today's questioning included who told you that information.
Right.
And even if it's your client, you have to reveal it because of that. If it's another lawyer you're working with, they're in trouble for having said that. Then you go to them and say, how did you get this information? Why are you saying there was nothing there? So it really opens the door to really deep diving into questions of those lawyers. They become witnesses against their client.
I want to play you some quick sound from former twice impeached President Trump at a rally in Arizona. Get your thoughts on the other side.
I had a small number of boxes in storage at Mar-a-Lago guarded by Secret Service. There is no crime. You know, there is no crime. It's not a crime. And they should give me immediately back everything that they've taken from me because it's mine. It's mine. They took it from me in the raid. They broke into my house. Under the Presidential Record Act, everything should come back. All should come back. And under the Presidential Record Act, there is no crime.
He is literally admitting to crimes. I mean, on the scale of clients I wouldn't want right now, it's like Rudy Giuliani, Brett Favre, Donald Trump. What's your response as a lawyer if Donald Trump was your client and saying these kinds of things publicly over and over in front of live studio audiences?
I am sure that every lawyer who represents him has said, you cannot talk about any of these things. And they promptly are ignored. And I think it's time for lawyers to get smart. They don't get paid. He cheats them. And the one who did get paid in advance, Kiss, got $3 million in advance. He's been sidelined because he got paid. And so he's saying, I'm not doing your dirty deeds. I'm going to stay honest. So he's sidelined. It's really absurd that the lawyers keep signing on when they will hurt their reputations and never get another client again.
And get robbed in the process. Jill Wine-Banks, thank you so much for joining us this evening on The ReidOut.